Episode 294, Food Prices and Gardens. This is the Change Underground. I'm your host, John Moore. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. From the RTE website in Ireland, quote, World food prices jumped nearly 13% in March to a new record high as the war in Ukraine caused turmoil in markets for staple grains and edible oils, the UN Food Agency said today. The Food and Agriculture Organisation's Food Price Index, which tracks the most globally traded food commodities, averaged 159.3 points last month from an upwardly revised 141.4 for February. Both these were records, end quote. And from the UN News itself, quote, It is now more than 2 years that the COVID-19 pandemic continues to negatively impact our lives, our health and our economies, said FAO Chief Qiu Dongyu, explaining that the neediest face greater exposure to the pandemic and are the most affected by rising food and fuel prices. He pointed out that prices for staple foodstuffs such as wheat and vegetable oils have soared, imposing extraordinary costs on global consumers, particularly the poorest. Conflict has driven up international prices for wheat, maize and vegetable oils as war in the Black Sea region spreads shocks through the markets trading in these staples. The FAO Food Price Index averaged 159.3 points in March, up 12.6% from February, where it had already reached its highest level since its inception in 1990, end quote. And from the 6th IPCC assessment report, quote, Global greenhouse gas emissions are projected to peak between 2020 and at the latest before 2025 in global modelled pathways that limit warming to 1.5%, with no or limited overshoot, and in those that limit warming to 2% and assume immediate action. In both types of modelled pathways, rapid and deep greenhouse gas emission reductions follow throughout 2030, 2040 and 2050. Without a strengthening of policies beyond those that are implemented by the end of 2020, greenhouse gas emissions are projected to rise above and beyond 2025, leading to a median global warming of 3.2 degrees, somewhere between 2.2 and 3.5, by 2021, end quote. Food prices are already rising. The Russia-Ukrainian conflict shows very little sign of ending. Climate change is upon us and likely to get worse before there's a chance of a return to normality, whatever that actually is. And with much of the developing world still unvaccinated, new SARS-2 variants will continue to arise. Having just lived through a very mild dose of COVID-19 as a triple-vax citizen of a developed nation, I shudder to think what's going on in places less fortunate than where I live. For a glimpse into a totalitarian response, look at Shanghai over the past week. People sealed into their homes running out of food and routine medications. We are living at the confluence of a series of major events. Until now, my generation has been lucky. Too young to be conscripted for Vietnam, too old for the major conflicts of Iraq and Afghanistan. And here in Australia, we hadn't had an economic recession since the 1990s until the lockdown, and we've breezed our way out of that one in record time. Yet the feeling of uneasiness settles upon me. There's a crunch coming. I hope the world will navigate it with thoughtfulness and compassion. The evidence of history would point to a contrary outcome. We can, though, take steps now, as I've been suggesting for a while. We all need to start growing something. I've focused upon vegetables, fruit and herbs in this podcast, and I think it's possible for us all to do so. We are going to be adding rabbits to our list of species we care for in the next month. And if you have access to grass, I think this could be a sensible way to diversify your food sources, even if it means collecting green matter, grasses, weeds and leaves and so on, and bringing them back home to feed the rabbits. I think it's worth the extra 20 minutes a day or so this would take for a buck and 2 breeding does. And they'll be much quieter than a rooster or even a few hens. But if you can fit them in, I'd be doing that too. But it is the vegetables where I can help. I think we can all tell from the quotes at the start of the episode I don't think things are going to sort themselves out anytime soon. I'd love to be proven wrong, but I'm not holding my breath. So with my expertise in vegetables, no-dig vegetable gardening to be precise, I've had a course up on the interwebs for a while. Given what I see as the seriousness of the current situation and the need for people to get growing, I've reduced the price of the course from $149 to $17, or about 90%, 89% I think it was. That'll cover my hosting costs and a few software subscriptions to allow the site and the course to stay up and available. So if you have been put off in the past, now is the time to jump in and learn. If you know anyone who would be interested, and the more people we can get growing the better, please let them know. I'll have a link in the show notes, or you can go to the worldorganicnews.com website and click on the course tab. Please spread the word. We need to get as much food happening as possible, as close to the people eating it as we can. The best time to move from consumption to production was probably 50 years ago. The second best time is now. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. Thank you all for listening, and I'll be back next week.